Welcome to the Well Said Podcast, the podcast for inspiring as well as aspiring authors and speakers. Now, here's your host, dynamic author and speaker, Cedric L. Threets.
What's going on, great people? Hey, you know why I call you great? Because somebody's got to be great today. It might as well be you. Welcome once again to the Well Said Podcast, the podcast for inspiring as well as aspiring authors and speakers. I am your host, Cedric Threet, aka Cedric the Edutainer, Simple Cedric, and all that good stuff. Hey guys, today I have another great guest here for you. I have someone who's a friend of a friend. I had a friend call me and told me that, hey man, I know you're doing this podcast thing. You have got to get this lady on your podcast. My friend James Bolden called and told me all of that. And I said, hey man, I'm ready for it because any friend of James is a friend of mine. So today you are going to be blessed by this young lady. She has a plethora of information. But before we get started, you know what you got to do. You got to go ahead and hit that like button. You got to hit the share button. You got to subscribe. You got to hit the notification bell. All that good stuff that you do on these podcasts. And let people know what's going on here at the Well Said Podcast. Well, my guest today is Miss Kristina Joy Carlson. And she is an experienced entrepreneur, corporate leader, and global philanthropy expert. Kristina Joy Carlson is redefining what it means to lead with purpose. Through outrageous kindness, she helps individuals, businesses, and nonprofits achieve meaningful, lasting success. A sought-after speaker and best-selling author of Essential Principles for Fundraising Success and the soon-to-be-released Outrageous Kindness, a Mindset, a Method, a Movement, Kristina knows how to navigate change and turn challenges into opportunities. While leading businesses and driving global philanthropic growth, she managed nearly a decade of intense caregiving, profound grief, and her own cancer battle, an experience that reinforced the power of purpose, perspective, and action. Through her executive leadership roles at Carter Global, Ketchum, and fundraisinginfo.com, Kristina guided transformational capital campaigns raising billions of dollars. That's billions with a B, ladies and gentlemen. Billions of dollars around the globe while also creating bespoke training programs and developing innovative technologies for some of the world's largest nonprofit organizations and universities. She has also helped maximize the philanthropic engagement of former U.S. presidents and other heads of states, Fortune 500 CEOs, Forbes 400 individuals, faith leaders, celebrities, and everyday people. Today, as founder and CEO of Outrageous Kindness, she is applying that wisdom to create a movement that inspires leaders, philanthropists, and individuals to take bold, high-impact action, embrace accountability, and experience the magic of small acts that create big results. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce you to the wonderful and talented Miss Kristina Joy Carlson. How you doing, Miss Kristina?
I'm doing great. That's some introduction, I gotta say. Wow. That's amazing. And I think the part that I love the most is that we share friends,
Yeah.
that we are connected by friends. And
Mm-hmm.
just, that's what I love so much about our world is that our relationships connect us to other people. And it's fabulous to be here, Cedric. And I can't wait to have this conversation.
Well, thank you once again for being here. Yeah, my friends, Mr. James and Cynthia Bolden, they are great people. over in the Oxford, Mississippi area, and James called and told me about you and the wonderful work you're doing. And I just felt like, hey, this would be a perfect fit for the Well Said podcast and let people know what you're doing. And because that's what it's all about. It's about letting people showcase what they're doing and talk about their platform and just take this stuff to the world. Because as you said, we're all connected. I remember one of my church members talking about we're all just little dots. We used to play this game as kids called Connect the Dots. We're all
Yes.
connected in some form or fashion. So we're all just a bunch of little dots in this world because everybody knows somebody. So now you are an author and philanthropist, and you help nonprofit organizations, and you do all of this. So tell us about all of that stuff you got going on.
Okay. Well, so I've been working in fundraising and philanthropy most of my career.
Hmm.
And because of that, I have had just a marvelous, life. And you talked about my 10-year gauntlet of, some challenges. And, even through all of that, I still had the wonderful opportunity to work with generous people, people who see the world and say, you know what, I can make a difference.
Hmm.
And over the last couple years, the research tells us that that thought that, hey, what I do matters, that I can make a difference, that when
Hmm.
I wake up, how I show up, how I act, what I spend my time on makes a difference. That inclination has been declining.
Hmm.
And it's contributing to all kinds of challenges, not the least of which is a growing mental health challenges for young people,
Hmm.
especially, but also for our boomers who are retiring and leaving that thing, right?
Yeah.
That kept them connected, that gave them purpose, and now they're
Hmm.
retiring and thinking,
Hmm.
"Ooh, now, now what do I do?" So,
Right.
through all of that, I've looked at just, what can I do? And I think that's the question we all get to ask ourselves is, what can I do? And if anything about my story or my experience would inspire someone to say, okay, I'm going to try. I'm going to, no matter my circumstances, no matter where I am, I'm going to try to bring a positive result to my life, to this moment, to my work, whatever it may be.
Okay. Okay, that's great. And you mentioned the mental challenges of someone who's retiring. I know I'm experiencing that right now with my dad. He worked for an organization here in Birmingham for about 35 or 40 years, and now he's retired, and it's almost like, well, what do I do now? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Uh-huh.
he's going through some challenges. So I know exactly what you're talking about there. I mean, it can be challenging because a lot of us, we're connected through our work and we're tied to it. And some of us, for some reason or another, and it may be good, it may be bad, some of us define ourselves by what we do or our job that we're connected to. Of course, you and I know that that doesn't define us, but it takes a while for some other people to realize that. But I think that's great. So how do you get that out to the people and let them know that you're here to help them with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've got a book coming out
Hmm.
very soon called out,
Hmm.
as you mentioned, called Outrageous Kindness. And its subtitle is Mindset Method, a mindset, a method, and a movement. And
Hmm.
that's because, over and over again in my work in fundraising and philanthropy, I've known some wonderful motivational, inspirational speakers, and I've been to some great conferences and workshops, and everybody gets so, fired up, and then 30 days later nothing has changed.
Hmm.
And that's why we say there's a method to applying outrageous kindness to your life, because
Hmm.
you've got to take action. And
Yeah.
so within the book we talk about the kind method,
Hmm.
KIND. Every letter stands for something, but for someone like your father, right, there is a methodology to kind of reconnect to, okay, what is my purpose? What are my passions beyond work? How can I, even if I don't want to spend full time like a job, how can I actually continue to, contribute to the world around me, my family, my community, etc. So it is in the practical, in the methodology that people move from, oh my goodness, now what? Or from, oh, there nothing I do matters, to actually making a
Mm-hmm.
difference. And I do that, obviously through the book. It's kind of the foundational piece to the practice.
Mm-hmm.
But then we do workshops and we do one-on-one coaching with folks to help them apply that to everyday life. And we're starting to see great results. We're seeing teams work together more positively, have better impact, better results. We're seeing organizations raise more money and connect better to generous people, to contributors, to donors. So we're starting to see a real impact with what we're doing. And of course, we just want the whole world to practice outrageous kindness. In fact, Cedric, people say, well, why'd you write the book Outrageous Kindness? And I think, well, why wouldn't I? I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
hadn't met a person yet who says, oh, yeah, the world doesn't need that, right?
Right, right. If you're just tuning in, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking to Miss Kristina Joy Carlson. She's the author of a book called Outrageous Kindness. And the book you're talking about, this outrageous kindness, people talk about kindness all the time and
Mm.
to be kind, but you mentioned that kind is an acronym. What does the acronym stand for?
So the K is no more. And
Okay.
I can talk about that forever. So many of us live in an isolated world. We're surrounded by people who think like us, act like us, and so then when we get around people who aren't like that,
Mm-hmm.
we there's an otherness,
Mm-hmm.
that the media and particularly our politicians would like us to believe, that
Yeah.
disconnects us and
Mm-hmm.
polarizes us.
Mm-hmm.
So no more is the foundational part of being kind. It is recognizing that everything, all of your experiences, all your perspectives
Mm-hmm.
aren't the whole picture,
Right.
right? And
Right.
if you can recognize that, and then recognize that there's value in yourself and there's
Mm.
value in everyone else around you, you are on your way to practicing outrageous kindness.
Yeah.
The I, and this gets back to what we were talking about with the boomers, the I stands for impact.
Mm.
And it's about, what are your goals? What's your mission? What's your passion? What drives you? And how do you stay connected to that? So many people have dreams. So many people want to do things and they
Mm-hmm.
get disconnected. We see this at organizations,
Mm-hmm.
where they have, um, maybe they want to transform a neighborhood, but they get distracted. They get
Mm-hmm.
disconnected from
Mm-hmm.
that mission.
Yeah.
Because maybe there's a grant or something available. So that's the I, impact. N is navigate. And Cedric, the easiest way for me to explain that is, when was the last time you woke up in the morning and your day went exactly the way you planned it? I mean, it never happens. So learning how to deal with interruption, learning how to deal with chaos,
Wow.
learning how to look at your progress from a positive standpoint, whether or not it all goes perfectly or not. And that
Mm-hmm.
certainly draws so much from, my life experience of battling cancer and having, my parents die and my husband die all within a short, period of time. It teaches you,
Mm.
how to navigate through those kinds of situations. And then D is deliver.
Mm-hmm.
I get asked a lot about, how do you build resilience in kids? How do you help kids practice outrageous kindness? Well, one of the ways we do that is by giving them things they can do and
Mm-hmm.
accomplish, and
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily give them a, gold star for it, but just to show them consistently,
Mm-hmm.
what it means to deliver, what it means to do what you say you're going to do, when you're going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
The hard part for parents is, I say this all the time, if you want your kids to eat broccoli, you have to eat broccoli too.
That makes sense.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. We're talking once again, ladies and gentlemen, to Miss Kristina Joy Carlson, the author of the book called Outrageous Kindness. Now, you mentioned earlier that people go to these conferences and they learn all this stuff, but then 30 days later, nothing has changed. Yesterday, I was on a webinar, and the gentleman, it was a speaking webinar about your speaking business, and the guy was talking about
Hmm.
people who have what he called shelf esteem. not self-esteem, but shelf-esteem.
Huh.
Because he said that, you buy these books, you get all this wisdom and knowledge, and the book just stays on the shelf. You don't do anything with it. You don't take action. And I've taken and put my own little spin on it. I talk about being what I call shelf motivated. You're not
Uh-huh.
self motivated, you're shelf motivated because you're
I love
not
it.
doing anything with all this knowledge and wisdom that you have. Or you may call yourself, you may say you're self employed, but if you're not doing anything, you're just shelf employed.
I love that. I love that so much. And it reminds me when we wrote our first book, Essential Principles for
Mhm,
Fundraising Success. Josie Bass published it. And
mhm,
when we first contacted them and said, hey, here's the idea and here's a sample chapter, their first question back was, how are you going to market it?
mm,
Who's the audience?
yeah.
Who's going to buy this book?
Mhm,
So it is that shelf motivation that
yeah.
you have to keep in mind. And
Mhm.
that's been my biggest challenge with Outrageous Kindness. Everybody's like, well, who's this book for? And I'm like, I think it's for everybody, but they
Everybody.
don't like that answer. They want me to be, oh, it's for women who look this way and act this way and this, that,
Yeah.
and the other thing. And I'm like, yeah, it is. But I mean, I would say there's just as much in it for a young person thinking about what their life might look like, or for a
Mhm,
retired person, as we've
mhm,
just talked about, or a corporate leader who's looking for a way to get their teams, their company, their corporate culture, to turn around and be
mhm.
more productive.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree with all of that because all of that is so important. It is for everybody, but you have to be specific when they're talking about a certain niche or whatever, because that's the one thing I tell people when they write their book, you've got to know your market. I tell
Hmm.
them if you've written a book about football, it does you no good to go to a gardening convention because
That's right.
that's not your market. But once you
Hmm.
know your market and you can zone in on that market, then everybody can enjoy anyway because the things that you talk about, the knowing and the impact and the navigating, all of that is, I mean, that's universal. That's
Hmm.
universal. My latest book is a book for teenagers called Suit Yourself. And
Huh,
it's a book about choices, letting kids know that the choices you make today will determine the suit you're going to wear tomorrow. You can
very
wear
good.
you can wear a business suit, or you can wear an orange jumpsuit, or you can wear a clown suit, as somebody told me, but the choice is yours. So you suit yourself. We're
Mm.
talking today, ladies and gentlemen, to Miss Kristina Joy Carlson, the author of Outrageous Kindness. Now, you mentioned another book, so this is not your first book, huh?
No, it's not. I wrote a book along with my late husband, who was also in the fundraising industry, work, whatever, called
Hmm.
Essential Principles for Fundraising Success.
Hmm.
It came out in 2006, 2 weeks after my son had been born.
Yeah.
Uh,
Wow.
we did our first book signing and workshop 2 weeks after my son was born because he was 2 weeks late. I thought I had it all timed out perfectly, right? That
There goes
we
that
would,
navigation again.
that's right. He would be born, and then I'd have a whole month before we went to this huge conference, the Association for Fundraising Professionals, probably one of the biggest conferences in the fundraising, space. And I
Hmm.
thought, okay, I'll have 4 weeks, I'll be recovered. I might be able to find some clothes that fit. But no, he was 2 weeks late. And so I had 2 weeks. But
Wow.
it's a book that is written for people who are connected with nonprofits, whether that's as board members
Hmm.
or as leadership or fundraising professionals, talking about, just how do you have a more well-rounded, successful fundraising program. And we've got, 9 or 10 essential principles in there that we find are for most folks, and it's like outrageous kindness too. It's easy to understand. It's doing it that's the hard part.
Hmm. Yeah, that doing is something else, but I always say the hardest thing to do is to get started.
Uh-huh.
And
Absolutely.
once you, it's just like me mowing my lawn, going out cutting the grass. I hate doing it, and I have to motivate myself to do it. But once I get started, I'm okay. Once I yank that cord,
Uh-huh.
I'm good to go. And you probably heard the quote before that you don't have to be great to get started, but you do have to be get started to be great.
Absolutely.
So,
Well, and people, people ask, well, what's the hardest part about writing a book? And I said, writing.
hmm
You have to do it. You have
yeah,
to sit down and do it. It just doesn't magically,
right,
come out of your head. So
right.
yeah, to your point, it
hmm
is, you've got to do it.
Yeah.
You just got to get started. I was at a conference about it was more of a summit around Atlanta and Atlanta's lack of social mobility. And it's heartbreaking, Cedric. Kids born into certain neighborhoods, into
hmm
poverty in certain neighborhoods in Atlanta only have a 5% chance of
Oh,
actually getting out of poverty. And that's a decade. It hadn't changed in
yeah.
so long. But one of the speakers talked about how your mood follows action.
Okay.
And I love that so much,
hmm
just that thought that, I don't want to do it. I got nothing to do. La, la. And then you get started, like you say, and then all of a sudden it's that D in the kind method, deliver. When you
hmm
start making progress towards something, when you check that box
hmm
off the list, all of a sudden, energy comes. It,
Yeah.
it really can help bring more positivity to your own life or to the people around you when you're
hmm
doing things together, when you're
Yeah.
accomplishing things together. It can be such
Mhm.
a positive experience.
Yes, it can. You're absolutely right. Talking once again, ladies and gentlemen, to Miss Kristina Joy Carlson, the author of Outrageous Kindness. And you're absolutely right. Once you get started, you will be amazed at the progress you can make just by taking that one step. I mentioned to you earlier off air how even this podcast is something I've been procrastinating about, been talking about doing for the last maybe 2 or 3 years. And finally, this year, I said, I'm just going to step out and do this thing. So I got started a few months ago, and I tell you, the results have been phenomenal. I mean, I am having a ball, and then I'm meeting new people such as yourself and getting out here and just sharing with the world what's going on. And there's nothing like it. Now, outrageous kindness. We hear about kindness. I have a buddy in Atlanta who also talks about kindness. He calls himself the kindness ambassador.
I
And
love
he
that so much.
yeah, he goes out to schools and he encourages kids to be kind. And we had this thing we were doing called the Beatitudes, but not the
Hmm.
Beatitudes in the Bible, but these attitudes of being. And one of the Beatitudes was to have an attitude of kindness. So that was one of the Beatitudes. But you're talking about outrageous kindness. When we think of the word outrageous, we just think about going crazy. So tell us about this outrageous kindness.
Well, I think for me, the distinction is the mindset.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people think of kindness about the same way they think of when our politicians stand up and say they're sending thoughts and prayers.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Yeah.
yes, prayers are valuable and important things, but
Mm-hmm.
what else?
Yeah.
What else are we doing? We're equipped to take action. What
Mm-hmm.
are we doing? And outrageous kindness starts with the mindset that in every moment,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to try to make something good out of it. And
Yeah.
that is hard. That's outrageously hard.
Yeah.
We all are stressed out. And, there's nothing like being a caregiver to eat at your emotions and leave you so drained that, worrying about whether or not you're kind to, the people you come into contact every day,
Mm-hmm.
maybe isn't so important. And we look at, recent research from the Human Resources Society shows us that just in the United States, businesses are losing $2 billion a day to uncivil behavior. And
Wow.
it doesn't surprise me at all because think about it. Somebody's rude to you, somebody
Mm-hmm.
cuts you off in traffic, one of your
Mm-hmm.
coworkers is
Mm-hmm.
being a jerk. What do? You
Yeah.
spend 2 hours telling somebody about it or,
Mm-hmm.
complaining about it instead of saying, okay, how do I make this a positive? How
Yeah.
do I turn that around? That's hard, hard stuff.
Yeah.
Outrageously hard. So
Yeah.
kindness isn't about when you want to do it,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's a mindset that you bring to every moment in time where you say, okay, I'm going to value myself, first of
Hmm.
all, and I talk a lot about how important it is, like
Hmm.
they say on the plane, to put your own oxygen mask on first.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be kind, I'm going to be good to myself, but then I'm going to acknowledge that there's goodness in everyone else.
Yeah.
And even if, I'm having a tough day or they're not, treating me the way I want to be treated, I'm going to stay connected to my
Yeah.
purpose. I'm going to stay connected to that outrageous kindness. And to me, that's what makes it outrageous because it's not about showing up once in a while and donating a can of soup somewhere, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think about those things like that, donating the can of soup and sending the thoughts and prayers and all of that kind of stuff. Why do we do that, only when something bad happens or only during the holidays? I look at like right now, Thanksgiving is coming up next week and everybody's donating turkeys, which is great. I'm not knocking it, but I'm saying, aren't people hungry all year long? We with Christmas we have the toy drives, and I'm like, don't kids play with toys all year long? So why do we have to do this stuff this time of year or whenever just to make ourselves feel good about ourselves or something like that? And then the next minute we're cussing you out, you know?
Well, you know what? It's a muscle. Generosity
Hmm.
is a muscle, and
Yeah.
you've got to start training it somewhere,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So, if this time of year helps remind us
Hmm.
of our humanity, helps
Hmm.
remind us that giving feels good.
Hmm.
Giving does feel good. Years ago, I worked with a man, Doug Lawson, who wrote a book, Give to Live.
Mm.
And it was all about the positive endorphins we get when
Mm.
we're giving, when
Yeah.
we're generous. And
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, I've known a lot of rich people, really super rich people who
Hmm.
are unhappy.
Hmm.
But I've never met an unhappy, generous person ever.
Yeah.
There's a joy that comes from sharing who you are, what you are, whether it's that can of soup or,
Hmm.
a whole soup kitchen worth of things.
Yeah.
There's a joy in that. So, yeah, I mean, the holidays kind of condense it all, and brings it into focus, but it's a good launching pad. It helps us grow that muscle of
Hmm.
generosity and reminds us that, hey, you know what? Giving feels pretty good. I want to do this more.
Exactly. I wrote a book years ago. Actually, the book was about tithing, and it wasn't telling
Wonderful.
people that you should tithe or that you shouldn't tithe. It was just giving the history of tithing. And I talked about giving in the sense that, like you said, it makes you feel good, and that's what God did. For God so loved the world that he gave. And when we give, it makes you feel great. Also,
Mhm.
being a servant, when you're serving someone else, that's what it's all about when you can do that. We're talking, ladies and gentlemen, to Miss Kristina Joy Carlson, the author of the book Outrageous Kindness, a mindset, a method, and a movement. Tell us about this movement because we need more kindness in the world. I tell you, with the environment we're in now and how things are going and things are people are like, I don't know. It's kind of like we've gotten to the point nobody can agree to disagree anymore. It's like if you don't believe what I believe, you're an idiot and I hate you. That's the climate we're in right now. So how do we change that climate? How do we get some climate change, so to speak?
Well, I think one of the most generous things you can do in your life
Hmm.
is listen.
Mm.
Is, put those toys down, put down
Hmm.
that phone, put down that
Hmm.
iPad
Hmm.
and connect and
Yeah.
truly listen to the people around you, value who they are,
Hmm.
right? By listening and, especially for parents. And again, I go back to if you want your kids to eat broccoli, you've got to eat broccoli. If you want them
Yeah.
to put that phone down, guess what? You need to put that phone down. But I think, there's a lot we can do just by listening to people who don't agree with us, listening
Hmm.
to people who, maybe really hard,
Yeah.
to listen to, but
Hmm.
giving
Yeah.
space in our day to explore, relationships that maybe exist outside. And Cedric, you live in Alabama, so you understand this when I say, I live in Mississippi in a small town, and
Hmm.
we really can't afford to dislike people just because of what they believe, because then
Right.
we won't have enough people
That's
to
true.
hang out with.
Right.
It's a small town. And
Yeah.
so, I just think there's so much joy in this small town living because I have friends on all sides of the political spectrum. I've
Hmm.
got people from all kinds of walks of life, from all
Hmm.
faith or lack of faith.
Hmm.
And it's a real joy to see how there's still things that connect us all.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's something as simple as a cornbread recipe, or something that brings us all together. But I think
Yeah.
that's one of the biggest things we can do. And the last thing I'll say on that is it's so hard because social media and the
Hmm.
algorithms
Hmm.
feed you stuff that already like connects with
Yeah.
what you think.
Yeah.
It connects you with people who are like you, not
Hmm.
people who are different from you. The
Right.
politicians
Hmm.
want us to be separate.
Hmm.
They get more benefit out of us being separate and
Hmm.
disliking the
Hmm.
other thoughts,
Yeah.
the other politicians, the
Right.
other party than they
Hmm.
do if we all say, oh, no, wait a minute. We all share this thing. We can
Right.
all do this
Hmm.
together.
Hmm. Yeah. We're talking once again, ladies and gentlemen, to Miss Kristina Joy Carlson, author of the book called Outrageous Kindness. Now, mentioning listening, I think that is so important to just listen. I remember telling someone back when things were getting all heated with the murder of George Floyd, and you had all these
Mhm.
protests, and they were criticizing people for this and that. And I was telling them that I don't need you to agree with me. I just want you to understand.
Yes.
If you understand where I'm coming from and I understand where you're coming from, then we can go somewhere. So that
Yes.
listening is so important. You listen
Mhm.
to understand. A lot of times people just listen to respond. But if you
Yes.
listen to understand, then I think that makes a world of difference. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And, in our world today, we need so much of that. I
Hmm.
talked about the otherness.
Yeah.
We like to put people in a category where, somehow we don't have to honor them as much as we would because they have a label.
Hmm.
We've labeled them this, that, or the other thing.
Yeah.
And because we've done that, right? We don't have to extend the same humanity and courtesy that we might would if we hadn't put that label on them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, you also mentioned earlier your bout with cancer and the loss of your husband and all of those things. Now, it takes a strong person to go through all of that. You know how we always say, "Life be lifing," and
Yes.
that's all a part of life. So, talk to the people about how you were able to navigate through all of that. What is it that got you through all of that?
Yeah, wow, that's a great question, and I don't think there's any one answer. I mean, unfortunately, I am my biggest self-critic. And
Hmm.
so when I look back at, that 10-year, it actually was 5 years between when I had cancer, chemotherapy, radiation. My son was in third grade at the time. I
Hmm.
was running a business. Um, then I finished that. My father died. Then a year later, my mother died. Then my husband got sick with what's called Lewy body dementia. We did all we could to keep him in the house, but he passed away um, a couple years after that. So, all within 5 or 6 years, those things happened. And I was running a business, starting a business, trying to raise my son
Hmm.
as best I could. And he was
Yeah.
14 when my husband passed away. And I would say, I wasn't always good at it.
Hmm.
That's for sure. I mean, I certainly lost my cookies a lot, and usually with people I cared the most about,
Hmm.
and that's unfortunate for sure. But couple things that worked for me, and I say this all the time. I like to ask people, rather than commiserate with me, tell me what works for you.
Hmm.
I would meet other women battling breast cancer, trying to work, trying to do things. And instead of sitting and and moaning and groaning about it, which, it's hard. It's chemotherapy's brutal.
Yeah.
Radiation saps your energy for you. My radiation oncologist used to say all the time, it's the gift that keeps on giving
Mm,
because it zaps your energy for a long, long time. But, I'd always say to him, well, what's working for you? What's helping you, through this time? Let's talk about those things
hmm.
rather than sitting in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, we will acknowledge it's hard, but
Hmm.
let's talk about what is good. I think the other thing that helped me through it was, it's that I and the kind method, the impact. What's my purpose?
Hmm.
People who have, when you're going through life-threatening diseases, when you still stay connected to your purpose,
Yeah.
right, it gives you more energy. And I think about my husband battling Lewy body dementia, and he was something else, Cedric. I mean, he had been a college athlete. He was a successful entrepreneur, author, obviously, flew planes, whatever. And this disease ate up his brain, but
Mm.
he still set goals every day. And
Wow.
his number one goal every day was to try to help someone else smile.
Mm.
And that gave him energy, it gave him courage, and kept him going, long after his neurologist thought he would. And
Yeah.
into the moment he passed away, he was
Hmm.
working to help someone else smile. So staying connected to that impact
Hmm.
is so important. And then the last thing I would say is, just like generosity is a muscle, asking is a muscle that we
Hmm.
have to use. And
Yeah.
especially where we're in tough times, you
Hmm.
have to ask. You have to ask for help. You've got to honor that you can't do it all. And I'm so bad at that because I'm like, I've overachieved,
Yeah.
my whole life and asking for help. Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
yeah, so you got to ask. You got to ask for help. You've got to ask questions. And you've got to be kind to yourself. You just have to be kind to yourself and stop expecting. I talk to so many people that are in that sandwich generation, raising kids, caring for aging parents, trying to work. And they're like, oh, but I need to, help charity or serve on this or that. And I'm like, maybe right now,
Hmm.
maybe right now your purpose is
Yeah.
just to do what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
That is so awesome. Talking to Miss Kristina Joy Carlson once again, ladies and gentlemen, if you're just tuning in, she's the author of the book called Outrageous Kindness. And you mentioned that impact. That impact is so important and staying connected to your purpose. One of my favorite sayings that I don't know if I heard it somewhere or if I coined it myself. I'm going to give myself credit for it.
Good, do
I
it.
came up with this one through the Holy Spirit. I
That's
always
right,
say
do
that
it.
God has a purpose for every man and a man for every purpose, which
Uh-huh.
means that He's put all of us here to do something. And once you
That's right.
realize that He's got a purpose for every man and woman and a man for every purpose. So we're all put here to do something. And
That's
once you
right.
discover what that thing is, even if somebody else is doing the same thing, that has nothing to do with you because they're not going to do it the way God told you to do it. So we're all connected. We can all get out here and help each other do these things and get things going. Now you mentioned so you have two books now. So the outrageous kindness is not available as of yet, but people can pre-order it, right?
Yes, and I'm so excited. I love entrepreneurs and I love local businesses. And
Hmm.
right here in Oxford, we have an amazing independent bookstore called Square Books.
Hmm.
And they're going to host a book signing in January
All right.
that will be moderated by another author, my dear friend Beth Ann Finley. And they're taking pre-orders for signed books right
Hmm.
now. So people can go to squarebooks.com. And if they want a signed book, they can pre-order from Square Books. But then in the meantime, if people want to, give holiday gifts or, we say give the gift of outrageous kindness.
Yeah.
Um, the book will be fully available December 15th on Amazon and other online book ordering places. but you can pre-order now. Pre-ordering is available now. So we're excited about that and can't wait for more people to learn about outrageous kindness, the mindset, the method, and the movement, and then join our community online, outrageouskindness.com, or all the social media channels too.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. That is something definitely to look forward to with the upcoming holidays and things going on. We get into the hustle and bustle of doing this and doing that. But when we can get something that just makes us sit back and just kind of focus and see what's going on and then use that to help others, I think that is just so great with what you're doing and going out. And you mentioned that you help fundraisers. You help people learn how to do fundraisers, or do you fundraise for people? How does that go?
So most of my career, I've worked with organizations helping them figure out how to raise more money to do the important work that they do. So it comes from understanding how to engage people, how to connect people. What does that look like?
Hmm.
We know from our experience that money follows involvement, money
Hmm.
follows connection.
Yeah.
And the more you build the connection,
Hmm.
right? The greater the opportunity you have to secure the resources you need to do
Hmm.
great work. And
Yeah.
so that's what I do. I help organizations develop plans, develop strategies, and I help them implement them,
Hmm.
so that they can get the resources they need to make this world a better place for everybody.
Okay. So is that like a separate business that you're doing, or?
No, I do all that under outrageous kindness because we apply the kind method
Hmm.
to what we're doing. I also have a partnership with longtime friends of mine at a company called
Hmm.
Carter.global, where I do some additional consulting work for big campaigns.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is awesome. That is awesome. So I'm always intrigued and interested by nonprofit organizations and the work that they do, especially when it comes to the community, going into the community and helping out kids because I'm an author of children's books. I'm more
That's
focused on
right.
kids, but really just for everybody and doing things like that and getting things going. So now your book, the upcoming book, is you can get that with squarebooks.com. Will it also be available on Amazon?
It is. It's available now for pre-order, but then you can order it,
Hmm.
starting December 15th as well. But pre-orders now, up and
Okay.
live. Kindle
Okay.
version, hardcover version.
Hmm.
It's all there. You just search on Outrageous Kindness or Kristina Joy Carlson, and it'll bring you there.
Okay. And that's the other book as well. What's the title of the other book?
The other book, now it's a little old, it's been around a while, but it's
Mhm.
Essential Principles for Fundraising Success.
Okay. So anybody who's interested in learning how to fundraise and do all of that good stuff, that will be great for them.
Absolutely. Yes.
So, wow. We have been talking, ladies and gentlemen, with the great Miss Kristina Joy Carlson, author of the book Outrageous Kindness. She has really shared some outrageous kindness with you guys today, and everything she said has been well said.
Well, that's quite a compliment. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been great. I mean, I always enjoy just hearing, what other people are doing. I call this platform, I call it my Elsie. Everybody has a cell phone where they turn the phone around and they're taking selfies. Well, I like to
Yes.
turn the phone around and focus on somebody else. So I
I
call
love that.
this is my
Else.
Elsie.
Uh-huh. I love that so much.
And
That's wonderful.
this is my small way of just sharing things with the world and trying to be kind, trying to share some of that kindness that you're talking about and getting it out there by letting people know who's out there, because a lot of times people just don't know. They wonder about all of these things and they wonder where can they go to get some help, or where can they go to learn some things. So just listening to people like yourself and reading your book, I'm sure we're still people in the right path. I mean, because you've got so much information in there, you're talking about all kinds of things like knowing where you are and your day, navigating your day and all of that and making that impact. All of those things are so very important to the world we live in right now. So I just want to thank you for coming out and sharing your time with us today on the Well Said podcast. And tell us once again how you can be contacted.
Yeah, so absolutely. We have an Outrageous Kindness website, so they can go to outrageouskindness.com and connect with us there. There's links there for ordering the book. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Just search Outrageous Kindness and you'll find us. And we'd love it so much if people would connect with us. We're trying to start a movement, so we
Mhm.
love when people share stories of kindness with us. We like to highlight that, share it with others, and help grow a movement of outrageous kindness.
Oh, wow. That is so awesome. Well, thank you once again, Kristina, for joining us, and I really appreciate it. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another great episode of the Well Said podcast. Hey, you know what you got to do with this thing. You got to share this. You got to like it. You got to subscribe. You got to hit the notification bell. And you got to have a great day. But most importantly, you got to continue to be great. And why? Because somebody's got to be great today. It might as well be you. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Well Said podcast. Tune in next time for another exciting and informative edition. If you need help on how to become an author or speaker, contact Cedric at cedric3.com. And thanks again for listening to the Well Said podcast.